So let's continue on with what the book's about. And as Alison said, what we did was found there was a big gap between the pioneers and the laggards. We wanted to look at what was it about these organisations that had adapted and were thriving in the new world of work. And as she said, it came down a lot to organisation culture. We realised that in the 20th century we had a culture driven by the quite successful but massive, hierarchical, top-down driven organisations with a very kind of male model of work and careers. And in the 21st century, we're now finding there are more networked organisations with a different culture. And so what we decided to do was try and analyse where culture comes from. How do you see it? So one of the things we looked at was the workplace itself. If you can see an office where people work or physical building, you can tell something about it. So whether it was Microsoft in the Netherlands, Unilever in Germany, or Vodafone in the UK, they're all good examples of where you can tell there's a kind of open, democratic, flexible culture because of the way that people work and the physical layout. And also we can see that the workplace of the future is moving much more towards a meeting place rather than a building full of static desks. But we thought we need to get to grips with what culture means a bit more. So we actually came up with a model of 25 different characteristics that make an organisation culture, covering things like the values in the organisation, the leadership style, management practices and decision-making processes. And we came up with two distinct lists. One was the traditional top-down command and control, do what you're told kind of culture. And the second one was the empower, trust culture that we were seeing in some of these more successful 21st century organisations. So we put these together in two lists, A and B, and as Alison said, then did a survey of something like 366 middle managers, primarily people from the alumni of Henley and Cass business schools, these people with MBAs, and asked them to compare their organisation between these two lists. So we got very creative. We said, well, this is list A and this is list B. What should we call this new style of culture? So we're pleased that we christened the old one type A and the new one type B. So if you hear people talk in future about a type B culture, you heard it here first. I'm sorry we didn't have come up with anything that much more imaginative. But what was really fascinating was we asked people in the survey to look at their current organisation and then look at what their ideal would be. And on all the 25 factors, these managers said, we would like our organisation to be much more like type B than type A. So there's a kind of built-up demand amongst middle managers for changing the culture of the organisation. And we also connected culture with working practices as well. So when we actually looked at work styles, we realised that the organisations with new work styles were actually likely to value creativity more, to trust employees more, and to assume that they're more self-motivated. But the question still then is, well, so if managers want to do it, what's getting in the way? Why hasn't it happened? Why aren't all organisations working this way? And one of the key answers to that is leadership. We've already heard it takes a good leader to set the example. In fact, if you read nothing else in the book, read the foreword by Jim Turley, because there's a super example, Ernst & Young chief executive, talking about a personal story of how he managed to understand he needed some balance in life and then to make that happen through the culture of the organisation. So it definitely happens from the top. But the other thing we realised was that future work is not about making life easy for people or about improving work-life balance. It's actually about business success. As long as it's seen as something which is just an employee benefit driven by HR, it's never really going to get there. It has to be seen as something which is a business imperative, particularly in times of recession. Because from the survey, 15% of our sample thought that flexible working was a luxury in a recession. So only 15% thought it was a luxury in a recession, i.e. the rest felt that in a recession you still should be doing flexible working. And 84% said that they believe new ways of working would benefit their business. So there's an overwhelming majority of people saying this is good for business. It's not just an HR-driven initiative. So we thought, now, how do we take this type A and type B culture and turn it into something more practical? After all, this is a book we hope managers will be able to take and actually use. So we came up with some principles, which we called the trust principles. I suppose as a consultant, I've often been accused of using three-letter acronyms to kind of explain everything. You always go, this is an answer for something. Like all good business books, we come up with something which actually is a five-letter acronym, T-R-U-S-T, spelling trust. And Alison challenged me to make sure that I could remember what it all stood for without looking at my notes. The first T is actually for trust, because in this new world of work, essentially we're talking about giving autonomy to employees and then trusting that they won't abuse it. In fact, 88% of managers in our survey agreed that people are more productive if they're given autonomy over their working practices. So again, a large number of middle managers there saying that give people some control over the way they work, and it's not just nice for them, it's good for business. They actually become more productive. The R is for rewarding output. We need to stop counting hours that people put in and actually start measuring results. It's a key part of success if what we do is look at what people actually produce and stop the long hours culture, which is all about putting in unnecessary, unproductive hours. The TRU, I'm getting ahead of myself already, is understand the business case. Okay? Again, we've been saying this is a business issue. We have to understand the business case, and those organisations that we looked at where they have done this are clearly getting ahead and making a business success of it. TRU. S, start at the top. Okay? Leadership is very important. We must have interviewed dozens of leaders amongst the 60 or so interviews we did. And it's very clear, and again, Jim Tony is a good example, that it's not just paying lip service at the top. The chief executive, the top team have actually got to do it. And if they do, and it's successful, then it goes throughout the organisation. And finally, TRUST, treat people as individuals. Sounds fairly obvious, but if you look at the current work practices, what we've done throughout the 20th century, it's kind of a case of one size fits all. You know, you come to work, you as an employee fit in with our terms and conditions, as opposed to let's make work something that fits in with your life. Let's fit our work around your life rather than your life around our work. So managers have to put in extra effort. I'm not saying this is easy, but to understand their people and to be able to treat them as individuals. And they will return that, they won't abuse it. Big worry managers have is if I allow people freedom, they'll abuse it. And the evidence that we have overwhelmingly in the book is that they certainly won't. Okay. What we've done then in the book with the trust principles is also added the skills that managers need in order to put them in place and the practices that support them. So it's a reasonably practical book in that sense. And then finally, we've taken a look over the horizon to say what's the world going to look like in the future. And we've seen that organisations probably in the future are going to be getting closer to some model of work which looks a bit like self-employment, where individuals are given responsibilities measured on results, and allowed to work the way they want to. In fact, the best ones will be those that can combine the combination of the best things of self-employment with some of the security and career opportunities maybe of employment. But we see these things blurring, so there'll be less distinction between the two. Being an employee might look a bit like being self-employed. And then the other big thing, I think, is the environment. I think environmental issues are going to impact work practices more and more because young people are looking at their employers and saying, we want you to work in a green way. So I think there's going to be less commuting, probably more remote working, more work hubs and different places that work gets done. So to finish, what I want to do is just read a few words from the final chapter that kind of summarise some of the things we've been saying. We're still in the early stages of the transformation of work, largely because corporate cultures and management styles are not keeping pace with technological advances. This was why we embarked on this book, to help managers and organisations make the necessary shift to more efficient business, better lives, and a healthier earth for the next generation to inherit. Future work is one of those rare opportunities for all-round benefit. As we've shown through numerous examples in this book, it contributes positively to the bottom line while improving the lives of workers and helping to protect our fragile ecosystem. It's not an option for business any longer. It's a matter of staying competitive.